Okay, tonight we're reading Spaceman Bill. Here we go. Chapter 1. When Spaceman Bill landed on Earth, he caused a sensation. No one had ever seen such a fantastic spaceship before, nor anyone quite as wonderful as Bill. "How come I don't remember that ship taking off?" people said. "I don't even remember Bill," others added. "Yeah, and you wouldn't forget someone like Bill, would you?" everyone agreed. So who was Bill, and where had he come from? Those were the big questions. A TV reporter put them to Bill directly on the day that he first touched down. "Well, believe it or not," Bill began. But wait a minute. We're going too fast, because Bill was about to tell a huge lie. The sort of whopping lie that would cause all kinds of trouble. And as this is supposed to be a true story, maybe we'd better go back to the beginning. You see, Spaceman Bill didn't always have that name. Originally, he was called Yang, and he came from the planet called Zing. He didn't always look like Spaceman Bill either. He started out as a Zontoan, and they're the most intelligent species on Zing, and like all Zontoans, he looked pretty weird, to us anyway. Instead of arms and hands, he had 5 tentacles. Instead of 2 legs, he had 3, with several feet on each. Then there was his head, which had 5 eyes and a hole for a nose, and 3 mouths filled with rock-crushing teeth. It also had a great bunch of ears on the very top, for picking up the tiniest sounds. A pin could have dropped in a neighbouring valley and Yang would have heard it. There he is. Originally, Yang was really happy on Zing. He liked its orange skies, its 3 pale silver suns, and its many golden moons with their wonderful gardens. He liked its warm yellow seas, its pink trees and grass, and its collection of friendly 3-legged animals. But most of all, he loved his fellow Zontoans, and he loved one in particular. Her name was Yola. Yang thought Yola was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. The way her tentacles waved in the breeze gave him shivers down his 3 spines. So did her soft and furry purple tongues. And as for her 5 eyes, in Yang's opinion, they shone brighter than the golden moons. Yang adored Yola so much that he asked her to share his floating house. On Zing, that was a kind of like getting married. "We can float around the planet together for the rest of time," he told her. "We'll be eternally happy." Sadly for Yang, Yola turned him down. "Sorry," she said, "I have other plans. I mean to devote my time to caring for the moon gardens." Yang could hardly object to that. Tending moon gardens was the most respected job around. "I could come along and help," he suggested. She shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do alone." "All right, I'll wait until you're free," he told her bravely. "It won't do any good," Yola explained. "There are many moons and most have gardens. I mean to devote 1,000,000 years to every one of them. I can't ask you to wait that long." Yang was devastated. Here he was, all set to live forever, because Zontoans rarely die, and suddenly he couldn't see the point of living at all. "I'll drown myself in one of our warm yellow seas," he thought gloomily. "No, I won't. I'll crash land on my floating house into an ice mountain. Or better still, I'll head up towards our suns and let them turn me to a crisp or..." All Yang knew for sure was that he didn't want to live on Zing without Yola. So finally, he did the bravest, the most selfless, the most terrible thing any Zontoan can do. He decided to leave his beloved planet. He volunteered to spend the next 1,000,000,000 years in outer space. Chapter 2. 2 days later, Yang was summoned to the Space Center where the Chief Recruiting Officer wanted to see him. "I have a job for you," said the Chief. "I need you to visit a planet called Earth, but it's a long way off. How far? Asked Yang. About 50 million light years. No problem, said Yang. The farther the better. Also, Earth is very different from Xing, the chief warned him. I'll tell you the truth, it's about as different as a planet can be. Who cares, sighed Yang, thinking sadly of his lost love. The change will do me good. I don't know about that, the chief said doubtfully. For instance, lots of the creatures there, they how can I put this without hurting your feelings? They don't just grow plants and trees. What else can you do with plants and trees? Yang asked, puzzled. They're for making gardens, beautiful gardens. That's the whole point of growing them. Well, it's not how Earth creatures regard plants, the chief explained. Or gardens, come for that. For them, most plants are there to be eaten. Yang was too shocked to speak. He had to take 3 long breaths to calm each of his beating hearts. Some Earth creatures, the chief went on, this is really hard to say. You see, they even eat animals. This was going too far. The chief had to be joking, surely. You're having me on, Yang said. The chief gave him a mournful look. I'm afraid not. To make matters worse, the main inhabitants, they call themselves humans, are the most hideous creatures you've ever seen. They can't be worse than those slime creatures on Dokar, Yang said. Nothing's uglier than them. They're the absolute worst. I used to think that once, the chief confessed, but then these humans came along and I changed my mind. To show Yang what he meant, he pressed a button and a picture of a human flashed up on the wall screen. Yang let out a cry of horror. He couldn't help himself, because like all good Zontoans, he understood that 2 was the ugliest, unluckiest, most sick-making number in the universe. Anyone with a scrap of good sense avoided it like the plague. Yet, here was a creature with 2 of nearly everything. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs, 2 feet. Oh, yuck, said Yang. It really is horrible. And what on Xing are those things where its tentacles should be? They look more like hinged robot limbs than living matter. Humans call them arms, the chief explained. What's going on with our page? The humans call them arms, the chief explained. They can call them whatever they want as long as they keep them well away from me, Yang said with a shudder. Yes, well, here's the difficult part, the chief said in an apologetic voice. You see, to complete your assignment, you'll need to look exactly like one of these humans. Not with 2 of everything, shrieked Yang. You'll be doing it for Xing, the chief reminded him. He gave Yang a small metal device. Here, wear this. It's a hard light hologram generator. When you turn it on, it will project a 3D image of a handsome human being. Of course, you'll still be the same old you underneath. The hard light drive, its new technology, means that the image is solid, so even if someone touches you, you will seem to have arms rather than tentacles. Tentacles aren't considered handsome by humans? How can I be handsome without tentacles, groaned Yang, thinking again of his lost love. I take your point, the chief replied. Tentacles are the best, but for this assignment, you have to blend in and see things from a human point of view. And to humans, your 3D image will make you seem like a movie star, even better looking maybe. With luck, you'll be the handsomest human on the planet. Hold on, said Yang. What's a movie star? Is it some kind of interstellar body, like a moving sun or something? Not exactly. As far as we can gather, it's more like a kind of human god. It's what most people on Earth seem to worship. They certainly get very excited when movie stars appear in public and on a thing called TV. They often sit in the dark for hours just gazing at giant pictures of them. These humans sound crazy to me, Yang said. Crazy or not, said the chief, that's how they are. So, what we've done is this. We've chosen the 10 best-loved male movie stars, mixed them all into one, and that one is you. Go on, activate your hologram. Take a look. Get used to the new Yang. If I must, Yang grumbled and switched on the generator. Straight away, a 3D image of Yang's human self appeared on the screen, which now doubled as a mirror. The lifelike image grinned back at him in a truly awful way, revealing 2 rows of dangerous-looking teeth. Good grief, said Yang. I see what you mean about Earth creatures eating one another. They're obviously well equipped for it. The chief gave Yang a reassuring pat. Or 3. Don't worry too much about the teeth. Humans always bare them when they're feeling friendly. They can't help themselves. It's their nature. They call it smiling or grinning. Yang took a few more calming breaths. Okay, so they'll see me as a fellow human. With a bit of practice, I think I can live with that. But how will they understand what I say? How will I understand them? How will we communicate? Easy, said the chief. Here's your translation device. Once you activate it, everything you say will be turned into a language called English. No one will hear what you're saying in Zontoan. All they'll hear is the translation. Why not give it a try? Yang nodded and took a deep breath. Greetings to the people of Earth, he muttered, addressing his human self up there on the wall screen. I am known as Yang, and I come from a planet called Zing, many light years from here. To his amazement, the sounds that issued from his human mouth were entirely different. Hello, boomed a foreign voice. My name is Spaceman Bill, and I've just returned to Earth after many years spent wandering in space. Of course, most of this sounded like nonsense to Yang. Just one word stood out from the rest. Bill. It was the word every Zontoan knew, but nobody used, because on Zing it was the worst swear word possible. Saying it loud just once was enough to condemn you to the gold mines for millions of years. Yang hastily turned off the translation device. Did I hear what I thought I heard? He asked in a scared whisper. Did we say that word? The chief gave Yang a few more fatherly pats. You have to understand that Earth is a very peculiar place. There, the name, but even the chief couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. Anyway, it sounds familiar to them, friendly too. It's the sort of everyday, old-fashioned name most people trust on the part of Earth where you'll be going. Where's that? Asked Yang. To a huge island in the southern oceans. A map of the Earth instantly flashed up on the wall screen. Here's where I'm talking about, said the chief, pointing. They call it Australia. Why am I going there? For lots of reasons. By the looks of it, it's fairly cut off from the rest of the planet. Also, the climate is rather like ours. The people are extra friendly and there aren't too many of them. Except for some primitive animals, most of the island is pretty well empty. It's smothered in plant life and that's about all. So you see, it's perfect for what we have in mind. Ah, said Yang, with a gleam of understanding dawned in his many eyes. I think I can guess the point of this visit. I'm sure you can, the chief said with a knowing chuckle. So once you've arrived and settled in, here's what I want you to do.
What did I want him to do?
We'll find out, won't we? Chapter 3. Yang did nothing but sleep during the long voyage to Earth. He was good at sleeping. By human standards, he was a cosmic champion. A few hours before his arrival, a bleeper woke him. He stretched his tentacles, rubbed his eyes, rustled his ears, and peered out through a porthole. There was nothing to see yet except the surrounding stars and the occasional asteroids spinning by. So he made himself a meal of blended minerals and crumbled rock. Zontoans never, ever eat living things. Then he washed it all down with a long drink of salt water. He felt a lot better after that, and by then the bleeper was sounding again. This time, when he gazed out, there was Earth directly ahead. He hadn't been prepared for it to look quite so blue, and for its swirling clouds to look quite so fleecy white. Blue and white weren't exactly his favourite colours, because on Zing they hardly existed. On the other hand, Yang remembered the chief's advice to try to see things from a human point of view. And that did make Earth seem a little better. It wasn't Zing, or one of Zing's glorious moons, but by all accounts it wasn't a barren rock like most of the planets closer to home. With luck, it might turn out to be useful. Already, Yang's ship was in orbit, and as it crossed a vast southern ocean, he caught the first glimpse of the island called Australia. Ah, this was more like it. Not much blue and white here, just lots of yellow-brown land with a fringe of brightest green. The question now was where to touch down. The chief had advised him to choose a spot near the edge and to explore inland from there. So that was what he did. He headed for the nearest shore, where there happened to be a big blue inlet, more like a friendly-looking pond rather than a river. Yes, this would be a perfect place to start his exploration. So he closed his eyes, concentrated, and the ship, which could read his thoughts, zoomed down. It settled with barely a splash on the wind-ruffled surface of the water. Knowing how few humans there were in Australia, Yang hoped to have the inlet to himself. Yet when he opened the hatch, he was greeted by a horrible sight. Gathered around the edge of the pond were thousands of human beings. There were also primitive flying craft buzzing overhead and primitive boats buzzing across the water toward him. Yang had never heard such an awful racket. His ears quivered so hard they nearly tore loose from his head. What on Zing have I come to? He wondered dismally. But Yang was no wimp. He could be brave when he had to. So he activated his hologram generator, squeezed his translation device, and stepped out onto the rim of the spaceship. The nearest of the boats raced up alongside. People on board pointed strange objects in his direction, long metal pipes with strange dangly bits. Reached threateningly across the water. Already, although he didn't realise it, he was on TV. Wow, what a hunk, gasped millions of female viewers. What a handsome guy, complained millions of male viewers. He must be a movie star or something, they all agreed. The people on the boats were just as impressed. Hi there, they cried weakly, almost overcome by his good looks. Though what Yang heard them say via his translator was, greetings to a fellow earthling. Yang was all ready with the speech he had practiced with the chief, and it came out exactly the same as before. Hello, boomed his movie star voice. My name is Spaceman Bill, and I've just returned to Earth after many years spent wandering in space. No one answered for a moment. They all looked kind of stunned and puzzled too. Then one of the reporters stepped forward and put the questions uppermost on everyone's mind. Who are you then, Bill? I mean, who are you really? Because I have to admit, I've never heard of you before, and what part of Earth did you set out from? Yang had hoped not to run into people right away, but he had a second speech ready just in case. He thought of it as his big lie. Well, believe it or not, he said, and gave his broadest, most heart-stopping grin. I'm an Australian, just like you. What's more, I set out from here, from very close to this spot. The people on the boats looked even more stunned and puzzled. You sure about that, Bill? The reporter asked. Because like I said, I've never seen you before. Not that I recall, anyway. Yang didn't hesitate. He pressed on with the big lie part 2. That's because I'm not of your time. I come from the distant future. The future? All over the nation, people were riveted to their TV sets. This was the best reality TV they'd ever seen. It was like a super game show. Yes, the future, Yang continued in Bill's voice. I took off in the year 2505 and got lost in the countless time trails that crisscross outer space. Considering how many trails there are, I'm lucky to have found my way home at all. Which reminds me, what century is this? It's early in the 21st, stuttered the reporter. That's nearly enough for me, said Bill with another of his heart-throb grins. I reckon I'll stay right here. The local mayor had hitched a ride on one of the boats. He couldn't bear the idea of being upstaged by a mere TV reporter. And he quickly grabbed a microphone. Welcome to Sydney, Bill, he cried above the buzzing of the boats and the planes. I know you're going to love it here in the good old-fashioned past. 2505. Did I hear you say? Yeah, well, this will be a refreshing change for someone like you. And just to make you feel at home, I'm offering you the freedom of the city. He pointed towards Sydney's high-rise skyline. There it is, Bill, and it's all yours. Go where you want and see what you want. Stay where you want. That's when Yang nearly made a mistake. Who'd want a place as smelly and crowded and primitive as that, he said, fluttering his ears in disdain. What I need to get my tentacles on are your wide open spaces. They're what I'm really after. But luckily for him, he was rescued by his translation device. This is what Bill actually said. "Ah, yes, it would be inhuman not to love such a quaint old city. At heart, though, I'm a country boy. The Australian bush, that's what I really yearn for." The TV ratings instantly shot up. "Our Bill's a true bluey boy from the bush," the women sighed. "I might have guessed it," the men said enviously. "Bill's a rugged man of the land." Meanwhile, the TV reporter saw another chance to grab the limelight. "If your heart's in the bush," he said, "how come you left it? How come you flew off alone into outer space?" "I did it for Zing," Yang said, telling the truth for a change. Once again, the translation device rescued him. "I did it for Australia," boomed Bill. When they heard this, the crowd along the shore went wild. All over the nation, people were jumping up and down in front of their TV sets. "Bill's our hero," they howled together. "An Aussie through and through, a true patriot. He's the bloke for us." The mayor's boat zipped in ahead of all the rest. "I'll personally see to it that you get back to the bush, Bill. You deserve to rest up after what you've been through. But first, I'd be honoured if you'd stay a while in our fair city." Yang could hear the roar of cars beyond the shoreline. He could see exhaust fumes hovering above the buildings. His sensitive nose could detect the smell of cooked plants, of roasted meat. He didn't fancy the city at all. "Murderers," he wanted to shriek out. "Cannibals!" Except he didn't dare. Instead, he allowed his Bill self to smile and nod and step down onto the mayor's boat. Everyone was so excited to have Bill amongst them that they didn't see the hatch of the spaceship sliding closed, and they were too busy ferrying him ashore that hardly anyone noticed how the ship suddenly sped away without a sound. 1 second it was there, the next it had disappeared into the sunlit sky. Only a few little kids saw it go. "Bye-bye," said a toddler standing on the shore. "No more Bill." "No, dear," said the mother. "You mean, hello, not goodbye. Spaceman Bill's still here." Yang, whose ears heard everything, glanced towards the toddler. He decided then and there if he had to spend time amongst humans, then he preferred the smaller ones. Even though they had only 2 eyes like the rest, at least they used them.